the band history can be divided into pre-Geffen, Geffen, and post-Geffen. We've
Yeah,
arrived at Geffen. Now, I don't want to, go too far into things you've talked at length about, but I
yeah.
hopefully maybe we can dig a little deeper into the Geffen record and maybe unearth some things that you haven't talked about before. I'm curious. I consider this your least charming album. It's great. It's a good album, but for me, that would be the way I would describe it. It's a very good album, but like I said, it lacks a kind of a warmth that I would be looking for, or even a self-mockery. It's sort of a straight ahead Mommyheads record, and that amazed me because we're talking about Don Was here, who reinvented Bonnie Raitt, and Was Not Was, all these crazy. He's a crazy, interesting, creative producer, and I know you didn't get the best of him. He was there at the beginning, and he kind of vanished from your lives when the record needed to be finished. But I'm still curious, was he gun for hire, or did he have a vision for your band?
He was great dealing with the label. We were nervous. He was great when we were like, we need a horn section. Tower of Power just makes a phone call. They show up in an hour. Like he had all the connections. He was great in the basic tracks, but when we needed someone to go, you're being too safe, no one was there to do that. We probably should have John Bryan produce it, who came and played on it.
Yeah.
John was pushing the envelope. He was doing Elliott Smith when that was happening. So we got a more. I think he's a soul jazz producer. He's amazing, but he's not an experimental prog guy. He can't stand Queen. I knew he had a problem when I said we were going over bands we liked. I said, "Well, I love Queen," and he goes, "I don't like Queen." Wait, what? What? So we had this conflict, and I thought, "Uh oh." And we needed. Beck was putting out Odelay. We needed. Radiohead put out OK Computer. We needed to take more chances. And we were nervous. So we went with what we knew, which was Four Guys in a Room. That record is literally live. And you don't do that in 97, 96. You don't make a live record. We weren't Uncle Tupelo. We could have called it live, but we chose to go up against OK Computer with that, and it just didn't work. There were some great songs on there, but I agree there's just zero nature vines crawling up the sides of it. There's zero. It's like black and white almost sometimes. There's not enough color, and there's not enough. There's no gargoyles hanging off the tops. It needs a little. It needed more perfume and smells and spices. And it is what it is. Some people love it and adore it because it was so simple
Hmm.
and everything was so hip hop beats and loops back then. But I think for us, we knew that we can better it after, and that's kind of why we maybe got back together. We challenged ourselves to one up it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're aware of the Sean Mullins catalog. Are you at all?
I know the name and I've heard some songs, but I need to know the catalog.
Well, if you have a couple hours, you can watch my interview with him. And I
Okay.
looked at his catalog. He did something very interesting. He had one huge hit, which was Rockabye. You probably
Yeah,
heard.
that's right. Yeah.
Now, he re-recorded his entire album, Soul's Core, that song is on. The whole album, just redid it with a very live sound and a very live. And now the original album is good. It's a good 90s record. The return to this record, song for song, is his masterpiece. It's absolutely amazing what he
That's
did.
awesome.
And I was wondering, is that something you'd ever do? Just redo the damn thing.
Probably not. And the reason is I'm not a revisionist. I hate looking at old pictures.
Hmm.
I hate talking about old stuff.
Is this
This is
interview painful? Are you
no, because you're coming at it so fresh.
okay?
But when we talk about it as a band, I want to do new stuff. I'm very much always looking forward. Michael loves to go back, the keyboard player. He loves to write paragraphs about songs from the 80s and 90s and hey, you might have missed this. Um, I think instead of spending the time to redo it, just write a new record. That's the way I feel. It's my personality.
The song that I like the best on this album is Jaded. And there's one interesting thing about it that I want to ask you about to see if it's just my imagination or if this is what you were thinking. There's a passage on there where you sort of ape or summon the end of Carry That Weight going into the end from the Beatles. And Elvis Costello, interestingly, did the exact same thing in another song, whose name I forget. Was that conscious? or is that just what
No,
the song was?
I think I was probably because we were so nervous. I was probably like unconsciously going, who had success in pop music? Oh, Beatles, Bee Gees, uh, the Eagles. I mean, the solo on one of the songs is Joe Walsh, essentially. I was Fleetwood Mac. I was referencing safe haven places that can withstand the fear of a $500,000 major label contract and being in Billboard and them going, this is Geffen's next big thing. I was just like living in a fear bubble, trying to make good art, which is not good.
Hmm.
It's an unhealthy place to create from.
In one interview, you were talking about how you kind of defied the odds here by, insisting on being an album band and a legacy band when so many artists in the 90s were looking for a song. And, there were you kind of said that the album kind of died in the 90s. I want to challenge that sentiment a little bit. And I also want to talk about this art of song, this one song thing. Uh, First of all, there were lots of albums in the 90s. I'm thinking of Arrested Development, Public Enemy, Lauryn Hill, Dismemberment Plan, Green Day. They were all really interested in making good albums. So they're out there. But they were also able to do something that I think your band has yet to do. And I don't say you've never done it, I say yet to do, which is have a song come out that people really feel like belongs to them, something that they can own. I don't listen to much Cake. It's just not my scene. I just haven't listened to their output, yet anyway. But that song, Short Skirt, Long Jacket, I just love it. When I listen to that, I don't care about Cake. It's just like, yeah, I live in this song, and so what kept you from finding that song or even wanting to have that?
Because we were never attracted as music lovers to the goofball, easy, digestible song to begin with.
Hmm.
And I much prefer a band that times it right with a song, but the song's way more than just written as a hit. In the 90s, the label would have loved for us to have written a Smash Mouth but when I listen to Hey Now You're a Rock Star, and I'm not bashing, or Third Eye Blind, do 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 do. When I listen to the hits that these bands produced, I'm left thinking, I'm glad I didn't write that. We were friends with Marcy Playground. They had sex. I something with candy in it, Sex and Candy or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
I saw their set. I liked other songs better. It's just I think the label's job was to find for a lot of bands, maybe not Cake, because we were good friends with Cake, and they seemed to really figure it out. Cake had some progressive songs they played live with us, and the audience didn't even clap sometimes, in the early days. And I'm like, that was great. And then they never played it again. It was like they were scared to rock the boat of the Speak song. Yeah, hey,
Right.
and they got stuck into this orbit of speaky, groovy stuff, which I love, but then they were locked into it. That's how they paid their rent.
Mhm.
And for me, I'd rather not have a hit that sounds like, hey, you're a rock star. I'd rather be an unsuccessful musician, but know that I have a catalog of enriching material, in my opinion, and there's no clunkers. So I was really turned off by, I'd say 99% of what a hit was in the 90s. When I hear 90s radio, hit radio, I don't like any of the songs. I
Not
see
even
it as
like
it was
No Doubt, not even
manufactured
Lauren Hill.
advertisements, you know,
No Doubt, Lauryn Hill, none of that.
none of it.
Wow.
I find it all to be um, lifeless.
Mhm.
I've been doing ads for 30 years. I know how to manipulate people through music. And I find at least for the 90s, I'll speak for what I know. I find the hits to be okayed by A&R guys to save their jobs, okayed by marketing guys, directors to save their jobs. And it could be played at a ski slope as you're sitting there getting a little hand warmth, but it's not something that's going to change my life or make me cry or laugh or make me look into that dark abyss and see myself or see that artist. Um, Neil Young, sure, you know. I didn't hear any of that in the 90s. I heard a lot of trivial crap.
Yeah.
It was garbage. And a lot in the 80s too, and even the 70s. It's as bad as Sugar, Sugar, dun, 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 dun. Are you really going to change my life with that song? So, look, I'm a lover of a lot of music, but if you want to talk about hit making and why we haven't even tried, it's because I don't want to be associated with anything that resembles something that a marketing director at a label would okay.
Mhm.
It's just not what I'd rather have a legacy of, and I don't want to sound offensive, but I thought about it. I probably sat down a couple of times. You know, now there's a legacy of bands that have ooh aha, like the Lumineers and hey oh. We could probably do that, but I know this band would be bored. I know they'd feel betrayed. I know that they would feel like, don't waste my time. And we're not approaching it as connoisseurs of any or of art. We're approaching it as Yes never did that.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
should we? King Crimson never did it. Genesis did it with I Can't Dance, and we don't listen to that record, you know. So, you know, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, find a ooh ooh ah ah long short whatever, you know, it just doesn't exist, and that's why that's a piece of art to us. So I'm totally happy with my existence in the music world. I feel completely happy. If anything, we're a rabbit hole you go down and you find what is a hit for you, but not for what I would consider a marketing plan for a major label or any sort of corporation. And I really don't want to sound like a jerk about it, but
No, well, let me interject. So
yeah.
here's what I'm hearing, and you're certainly good enough to write one of these songs. There's just no question. You could produce it, you could write it, you know enough to do this. Do you see it as a kind of a trap, an intellectual trap for you?
Oh yeah. You know, Andy Partridge recently released songs he wrote for other people. And I listened to it and it was like it sounded like uh not him.
Hmm.
It sounded like he was trying to make money. I love the guy, but it's not something I want to listen to again. And maybe someone could take one of those songs and make a hit with it, but it's not a world I'm going to live in. He can do anything he wants. He can sit at a guitar and write Beethoven level pop for me, but he has to make himself happy. You know, Drums and Wires and English Settlement, he is definitely making himself happy. The fact that there was a hit, great. It was an accident,
Right. Yes.
happy accident. But Senses Working Overtime is just a great song.
Right, right.
So
Leave it,
I,
but yes,
you
just
know, I can't live with myself if I wrote some drivel. And the other thing also is when you write a hit, you're looking at what's top 40 in that moment. Whenever you do that and you 10 years later and you look back and listen, it sounds dated. It's not timeless.
yeah.
And I don't want to write something that's not at least trying to be timeless because that means it's good, you know. Uh yeah, and you know, again, it sounds like I'm just defending being artsy or something, but what I love about this band is their BS meter is low. And they if I try to write a hit or what's current or they'll call you on it so fast. And they'll say that's dog poop. Next.
Wow.
So we're not going to sit around and construct things like it's a chemistry lab, you know. Um, if one day something is enormously big because of whatever reason, and it's still something we love and adore, and and we feel invested in it and we're proud of, great. But I don't think hits age well. I
Okay.
think Odyssey and Oracle aged well, and it accidentally had a hit on the end, but that was an accident.
Thank you so much for going into all that with me. I really appreciate you
Yeah, of course.
taking it deep.
Yeah.
After the Geffen thing fell apart, the band broke up. You did release a solo record, and it's not Mommyheads, but I want to talk about it anyway. Labello in 1999. It's as accomplished as any Mommyheads record. It's a very, very good record. I really enjoyed it. I want to know what you consider to be, and I don't have a song off it, but I just want to talk about the record briefly. What do you think was different about the result of that album as opposed to the Mommyheads? What was different about the process?
Well, it was a different band. It was the drummer of Cake, actually, Todd Roper. We were all such great friends, and I'm like, just play on it. He's such a great musician, Todd Roper. Bart Davenport is a local San Francisco musician. That's amazing. John Vanderslice, who we all, I'm sure, heard of or know, is on it. Dan Fisherman's on it. I was just like, who wants to play? Josh Rifkin, who was in Mumbling Jim, they had an island deal and he recorded at Compass Point with Chris Blackwell, Jason McNair. We just it was and it ended up rocking. And we played live and we played the Warfield and Fillmore. We were like had a major buzz, but it felt lonely. It just I love the songs on it. It was funky and rocking. I sang it too high maybe, but I would go into the studio for all ends, like hours and hours, and just have fun. It was a fun record. And it was just rock. It was like rock. It was funk rock, white soul. Um, and it was a local release, believe it or not. The CDs were just in San Francisco, and you had to import them out of San Francisco. And now it's on the internet, but against the will of whatever it was destined for, it's now more available. Um, yeah, it was fun.
Did you have visions of maybe going where the Mommyheads didn't go with your solo career, or was it just let's make a record?
Well, I had to deal with RCA Brewing. I had Artist Direct. That was the biggest booking agency in the world back then. They had REM and Dave Matthews. I had an A&R woman, Kia Novena, and Kneeling Elephant, and a publishing deal. And I was in LA, and it looked like things were happening. And then Napster hit. I was driving down Sunset Boulevard and said, "Why pay for money? Or why pay money for music?" And I said, "Oh, that's the end of that." And it was file sharing, and I noticed a shift and Artist Direct went public and they started at $10 and ended up at 3 cents in the same day because of Napster. And that's when I decided to take a break.
Yeah. And do commercials a lot. You did a lot of commercials.
I came to New York and fell into the jingle business, and it was like pop songs. Everything was 30 seconds. It was awesome.
Have we heard any of your jingles that we'd recognize?
You probably would, but I wouldn't. I can't even remember. I've done thousands of them, and that's the thing with them. I'm a plumber. I go and fix leaks, but
Right.
I'm not going to go point at a house and go, "I did the plumbing in that." You'd be like, "Great." So I realized at some point I got to do original songs again because I'm doing all this work. I'm making money, but I can't remember what I'm doing.
Yeah.
My brain is disconnected from the process.
And so here we have the remarkable thing, which was that after your original drummer died, you got back together, did
Yeah.
a reunion show, discovered you loved playing, and then started recording more albums, all of which are brilliant and wonderful. It's truly remarkable what you have done. Let's talk about these albums as much as we can.
Okay.